What is happening out there, Roto Scouts football fans? Welcome to an NFL DFS show, gang. Gonna break down the single game slate. Giants at 49ers. Should have put on my Giants hat for this one. Wouldn't want to taint the analysis with anybody thinking that I was leaning into the picks from a terrible, terrible New York Giants team that was lucky to pull that last one out. Got a monster performance, obviously, in the second half by not Daniel Jones. Saquon Barkley won that game. And unfortunately, he won't be playing this week, so that's problematic. Not going to be a pretty one tonight. Niners favored by 10.5. Going to be an ugly one. Obviously, I'm just vamping and killing time here as people start to trickle in. Looks like we're up to about 4 people here. Melissa's here. What's up, Melissa? Good to see you. Welcome to the show. Yo. Nobody else saying hi just yet, but I'm sure everybody's trickling in around the edges. Going to be an interesting one to talk through. A lot of wrinkles. No Saquon. Looks like no Brandon Ayuk for the Niners. Should have a little bit of an impact, downstream for some of the Niners pass catchers, just what they're going to do on offense overall. But it's kind of straightforward with where we're going with a lot of these plays on the Niners side. And then it's just a big bag of meh on the Giants side, given their messy passing game. Darren Waller's kind of obvious, but everybody else, all the wideouts just kind of suck. Danny Jones has his favorites, but they should be getting Wan'Dale Robinson back tonight, so that's going to throw a wild card into the mix from what we've seen over the last couple of weeks. Just going to be an ugly one, and I just think that we're going to get week 1 Daniel Jones tonight. We're not getting week 2 Daniel Jones, just with the pressure that the Niners are going to be getting. So it's going to be an ugly one for the Giants. Buckle up for that. To put it in perspective, we'll see it in just a second. The Giants kicker is one of the highest projected players on the team. So that's never all that good. Power, what's going on? Power needs to recover from Sunday. Yeah, I'm still recovering from lack of sleep over the weekend. I've been trying to not sleep till like 2 in the afternoon to recover on Monday and Tuesday, the last couple of days. But it hasn't been going that well. It's cutting into my days, having to spend like 48 straight hours awake over the weekends. I was hoping to get a show in for midweek NFL stuff, looking at the main slate, but I just kept on adjusting the projections over and over again. Finally put them up this morning. Got some more adjustments to make. I was talking about it on the baseball show. I was initially considering maybe like popping on, doing like a watch along / let's talk about quarterbacks show tonight during the game. But probably not going to go that route, honestly. I'm feeling kind of tired. I am going to try my damnedest to do a football show at some point tomorrow, though, so we don't have to marathon our way through Saturday. We will see what happens. I know I say that basically every day at this point, but yeah, just not enough hours in the day right now, gang. Looks like we're up to about 12. That gives me enough, I think, to get started here. A little quorum, as they say. Whoops, we're on the wrong tab already. Updated stuff for football. These are the most current version of the projections. So I took Ayuk out with an update after the baseball show. So sometime in the last hour, 45 minutes. I also corrected, if you grab the projections the first thing this morning, there were some errors in the DK projections, guys, that I had to adjust for injury or absence. I just forgot to add that to the DK formula. So there were some funky looking projections on the DK side as compared to FanDuel, where guys would be a receiver projected higher on FanDuel than on DK, which doesn't make any sense because DK's got the full PPR. So I corrected that in an earlier update this afternoon. But if you grab the projections first thing today, make sure that you grab the current set. I think you guys all know that anyway. But looking at the board, obviously we've got the big meatball and Christian McCaffrey is our highest projected guy by far on both sites. It makes sense. He's the high. Oh, let me open up the. We do need the DK captain pricing this time. I got to remember to do that, do it and undo it each time. Or maybe I'll just make a separate dashboard for single game. But still a work in progress on what's being shown on the dashboard. But yeah, so McCaffrey 13-2 and 19-8 in the captain role, 18,000 on the FanDuel slate in either role. The most expensive player on the board essentially functions as though he's a quarterback when it comes to like how to analyze the price bump on the DK board. I think McCaffrey kind of falls into that bucket like I talk about with quarterbacks a lot. A lot of the times on DK, given that price offset, you see quarterbacks drop down to being hyper valuable in flex roles and always wanting to be in the flex role given their high scoring nature, but the salary offset becomes a concern. So I think McCaffrey might give you more value in the flex role with a Debo, a Kittle, Certainly not many people from the Giants, but somebody else maybe in that captain spot. The San Francisco D, I'm sure, is going to have a pretty monster game here against Danny Dimes and this pathetic Giants offense. So while I think McCaffrey is the clear-cut best option to put up the highest overall fantasy score, does he offset it? Does he exceed everybody else by such a significant margin that it pays that difference with that massive captain salary at 19.8? That becomes the question. I do think you want a pretty fair share of them in the captain role. Don't get me wrong. If you're building out 150, you definitely want to have a pretty big chunk of Christian McCaffrey in the captain role. It's hard to say McCaffrey in the captain role without saying McCaffrey captain like I just did. But it's a situation that the salary does have a pretty major impact. Where on the opposite side of that same coin, I think Brock Purdy is almost so cheap that he kind of defies that little scoring paradigm on DK, where his multiplier 14-1, it's still high, but it's not that much higher than, say, Debo in the captain spot. It's certainly higher than most of the guys on the Giants. 3,000 more than Darren Waller is obviously a tax, but I think he's a little bit more viable with the multiplier applied. So it's just a weird slate as far as that goes. McCaffrey obviously is your number one projected guy. It's clear cut. It's right here. 20 plus on DK, pushing 20 on FanDuel. Obviously tons and tons of upside. San Francisco massive favorites as 10.5 point favorites. There's the possibility, they talked about wanting to limit his volume a little bit coming into the season, and then he saw 100% of the snaps last week. So there's the possibility that San Francisco just gets out to a pretty decent lead, starts handing the ball off in different directions. But McCaffrey's obviously the guy who's most likely to lead this slate in fantasy scoring with a bullet. I mean, you run this one 100 times, McCaffrey's leading this slate a pretty fair chunk of them. Melissa says, you'll be happy to know that I got to see the Rangers beat the living shit out of the Red Sox yesterday. I love that. Yeah, I saw that you were going to the game you mentioned in the chat. Tizzle's here. What's up, Tiz? Lone Wolf's here. What's going on, buddy? Hit the like as you come in. I appreciate that. Yep, nice reminder there, Lone Wolf. Hit the like. Hit the subscribe. We'll build up the looks and the views and the likes and everything for the football show here. Sir Spence the King. What's going on, Spence? Is that a hand-drawn minion in your avatar there? Looks like a minion. Blue overalls, yellow guy, only one eye. Pretty sure that's a minion. Not many others fit that description. As I said, this is uncomfortable as a Giants fan. The fact that their kicker is projected that highly. Matt Breida just barely outpacing him in terms of his projection, and I don't really like Matt Breida at all. Not totally confident that he even cracks to that level. I think Gary Brightwell's going to get a decent amount of the touches here, and they're probably going to split it fairly evenly. And Breida's a fairly low-end running back anyway. He's an okay backup. He's an okay handful of touches a game kind of a guy, but as the feature back, dicey. Darren Waller, I believe in. Tremendous projection, or not even a tremendous projection, but a pretty good projection. Obviously a tremendous talent at his position. Then we get the kicker and the Giants defense before we get to any of their wide receivers. That's just how big a mixed bag at wideout it is, with Hodgins and Slayton and Wan'Dale presumably coming back, and Paris Campbell and Jalen Hyatt. It's just Sterling Shepard still on the team. It's just, oh, God, they're so bad. PewDiePie drew that. Okay. There you go. Thought it was a minion. I do know who PewDiePie is. Not a big... oddly, as I'm doing a show on YouTube, I'm like, I'm not really big into watching people on YouTube. What an asshole. But that's never really been, I've never been into the gaming streams. So like, a lot of those folks miss me. But it's crazy with some of the subscriber counts that those people have. And if you do the math, like the average show of one of those guys with the numbers of millions of views that they get, and if you extrapolate that, do the math on like the price of an average movie ticket, and then think about what their box office gross would be. It's pretty bananas. Those guys, I mean, they obviously make some pretty good money. But yeah, never really got into that one. But he's a familiar name. Him I know. Never got into like the videos of watching people unwrap Christmas presents and stuff like that. Funny Rick and Morty line where Rick's yelling at Morty about something, and he just basically said, well, what would you know? You watch YouTube videos of people reacting to YouTube videos. Which I thought was a pretty good line. Never got those reaction videos at all. Anyway, let's get into the position by position. We'll talk about these different players. Danny Dimes, like I said at the top of the show, to me, when I watched that Giants game the other day, their comeback, yeah, Danny Jones made some throws. A couple of them required some pretty significant feats of athleticism from his wide receivers, but he made some throws. I really feel like Saquon was the guy that should have gotten the credit for that win, though, and that tends to be true for a lot of Daniel Jones's comebacks. He had a good game. The big difference was that they kept him on his feet. There was a lot less pressure in that game. I think that, like I said at the top, this is going to be a lot more like the Dallas game, where they just got to him with an insane amount of pressure, and they were putting him on his back, and he had no time to throw. Just seems like the San Francisco defense is going to be a lot more inclined to do that. They have a 30% pressure rate for the season, despite only blitzing 20.7% of the time. Not a massive blitz rate, but getting a pretty decent amount of pressure. 3 sacks a game, 2 picks. Not going to go well for Daniel Jones facing this defense. They do funnel mostly to the pass. They're going to bottle up this pathetic Giants running game. They're going to mash through the offensive line, so there's not going to be any time for them to do anything on the ground anyway. So I do think the Giants are going to take to the air. Jones is completing 20.5 passes on 32.5 attempts, 63%, 212.5 yards a game, 1 touchdown a game so far with a 6.5 yards per pass attempt, 4.3 air yards per attempt, but a 7.9 intended air yards per attempt. Not taking that many downfield shots, just 1 shot over 40 yards. That was also over 50. 2, this is a per game, so 1 look per game over 30. I mean, there's a decent amount of downfield action, and like I said, I expect they'll be throwing a little bit more this time out. But yeah, Power points out, speaking of the Cowboys, bad news for the Cowboys. Diggs tore his ACL in practice today, out for the season. That sucks. What a dynamite player, and just sucks. Much as I hate the Cowboys, I want these teams to be at full strength, especially a team with as good a defense as they were looking like. Yeah, that absolutely sucks. I know, who was it, Trey in the chat? Yeah, Trey in the Discord was lamenting that one earlier. Tough beat for Trey, tough beat for Dallas fans. Sam Cassell's in the Discord, asking a baseball question. Sam Cassell, I don't know if you're here for the football show. I'll answer that for you in Discord later on. But Atlanta can be the top points per dollar because they project for so many points, even though they're expensive. Relative, the salary differences are all going to be only relative, where their points can still be kind of out of control. In that spot, they were just projecting for a lot of points. But I'm sure you can't hear me. You're probably not here watching the show. So we'll talk about that in Discord later on. I didn't mean to be clicking around on this casually as I was talking about that. So Danny Dimes certainly in play. One of the highest potential scorers from the Giants side. You're going to need him. You do want to have a lot of the quarterbacks on both sides in the flex roles. On FanDuel, certainly in the multiplier roles. I think he is a viable captain on DK as well, of course. Just not ideal. What else is in here? Out position. So just not ideal given the multiplier. Given the fact that he's probably going to struggle. He'll obviously rack up some rushing yards over his 2 games so far. He's gained 102 yards. He's carried the ball 22 times, 4.6 yards per attempt. He's gotten it in the end zone once. Certainly has the upside to rush one in, particularly with the challenge that he'll have throwing it in. But with the amount of pressure, he's just going to be bottled up a little bit more than that, I think. He's already fumbled the ball twice, but hasn't lost one. That's been a problem for him throughout his career. Going back to his rookie season, he fumbled the ball 18 times, lost it 11 times. Fumbled it 11 times in 2020, lost it 6 times. 7-6 with only 3 losses the last 2 years. So he's gotten it under control as he's gained experience. But it was kind of ugly seeing him fumble the ball twice in the first game. Always lurking in the back of the mind with the Daniel Jones play. So rushing quarterback, if he loses the ball, counts as points against. Not going to help his cause. Brock Purdy on the other side of the game for San Francisco looks pretty similar as a passer to what Daniel Jones has done so far. Throwing the ball 27 times a game, completing 67%, so he's got a higher completion percentage. Throwing the ball a little bit more downfield, 8.7 intended air yards per attempt versus Jones's 7.9. He's completing a 7.9 yards per attempt, 5.6 air yards per attempt. Touchdown a game, pretty similar. in terms of the pressure that the Giants are going to be getting. Pretty limited pressure. Haven't been getting sacks. They have an okay secondary. Not much of a pass rush right now. Haven't really been putting much effort into getting to the quarterback. So I don't love the opportunity for the Giants defense to really shut down this San Francisco attack, especially because they're so multidimensional. Even without Brandon Ayuk out there, they've got McCaffrey and everything he does. They've got Debo and everything that he does. They've got a great receiving tight end in George Kittle, and that's a position that the Giants have had problems with over the course of the last God knows how many years. So just it's a challenging offense for them to be facing. Their defense is probably going to be on the field quite a bit because their offense is not going to be able to keep drives going. Their offense is not going to be scoring a ton. So I just really don't see the opportunity very much for the Giants D to do anything to shut them down. I think Brock Purdy, not to say that he's going to go out there and throw for a monster game, rack up a ton of touchdowns or anything, but I think he could have an effective game for the pricing. Projects out competitively with Jones, 14 on the DK scale, 15 for Jones. So similar-ish options. Jones will run the ball a little bit more. Might run one in, but Purdy's as playable in terms of being a quarterback as Jones is, in my opinion. Shannon says, and that didn't take long for Cowboys' luck to strike. Yeah, that's definitely sucked. Kevin O likes Paris Campbell tonight. Interesting. What inspires that, Kev? I'd love to hear reasons why. Matt Breida, 1.5 attempts per game so far, 4.7 yards per attempt. Gary Brightwell, the other back potentially in this offense, 5 yards per rush attempt. Only saw 9% of the snaps on average. Breida's seen 13% of the snaps on average. Breida's gained 2.3 yards after contact per rush attempt. That's a little bit better than his career average. High point for his career came in 2018 while with San Francisco. 2.1 yards per attempt after contact. Not a very high-end running back. His peak for... I'm bouncing around. I'm looking at some of his career stats off of Pro Football Reference, by the way. Where's his attempts? Yards per carry. Yards per attempt has always been okay. 4.1 last year in limited action. His high point, 153 carries in 2018, his second year with San Francisco. Gained 814 yards, scored 3 times on the ground, 5.3 yards per rush attempt. He's okay. If we get that guy for a day, but that was a pretty solid handful of years ago at this point. We're talking about that was a 23-year-old back versus a 28-year-old back now. Not that there's a ton of wear and tear. He's had 54 carries last year, 26 the year before, 59 the year before that. That's for a reason. It's not like Breida's been screwed out of a job here. He's a backup. He's a backup talent. 7,000 on DK, totally playable, obviously. 11,000 on FanDuel. Obviously, very much in play on both sites as just a guy who is going to be seeing some touches. I do think that they're going to get Gary Brightwell some touches here, though, too. There's no real reason to expect that they wouldn't. Brightwell, jump to his career numbers. More limited sample, obviously. We're talking about 2021, 2022. He didn't really get on the field at all in 21, 1 carry. Last year, 31 carries for 141 yards. A 4.5 yards per rush attempt. After contact last year, 1.9 yards per attempt after contact. Not ideal. 6th round pick, so it's not a guy they had a ton of draft capital in or anything along those lines. Eric Gray, presumably going to be active. Hasn't touched the ball yet. I assume he's going to be active. 1,400, 2,100 as a guy who might get a touch or two. Dart throw. Anybody have a line on any reporting on Eric Gray? Yeah, everything's just a couple days ago. Just could see touches, could increase. Everybody's got basically the same take I do. He might see a couple touches. For those prices, he might do something with it. Beyond that, not much to go through there. Let's see. Notes. Anybody got good notes on Eric Gray? He's 5'10", 211 pounds, out of Oklahoma. Went to Tennessee, transferred to Oklahoma. This is me not knowing college football, by the way. If this is obvious to the rest of you, well, too bad. You got to deal with me catching up. 5'9". Looks like he grew an inch since this report was written. 4'6", 240. That's not great. 65th percentile shuttle. Thank you to Fantasy Pros for a little bit of notes on this guy. Yeah, I think it's we're dealing with just might get a couple touches for very, very cheap prices, but seems more like he should be kind of priced in this range than in this range. This range rather than that range. McCaffrey on the other side, obviously the monster in their offense. 100% of the snaps last week, 92% the week before. 21 rush attempts a game, 134 yards a game. 6.4 yards per rush attempt. 2 rushing touchdowns on the season already. 1.9 yards before contact and 4.5 yards after contact per rush attempt. Just a dynamite runner. Best running back in the league, probably. 65-yard long already on the season. Involved in the passing game. 3 catches a game, 4 targets a game. Hasn't put it in the end zone through the air yet. Going up against the Giants defense that's allowing 68.25 yards a game, allowing 1.25 rushing touchdowns a game, 4.6 yards per rush attempt. Plenty of meat on the bone for McCaffrey. Do you get the weird Kyle Juszczyk carry? He's going to be active. I think he's going to be active. Hasn't touched the ball yet this season. Elijah Mitchell. Saw 0 snaps last week, 15% the week before. Carried the ball 2.5 times. Actually, I guess 5 times. I shouldn't have. I had to throw this together so I didn't have the per, so I just did a division here. But if he didn't touch the ball last week, I shouldn't have divided that by 2. Or, I mean, in a per game sense, I guess he is getting 2.5 carries, but he only touched the ball 1 game. 1.6 yards after contact per attempt, 0.4 yards before contact. Just plow it into the line a couple times for us, Elijah. Might be that guy, though, if he gets that look by the goal line. Same story with Kyle Juszczyk. Gets that touch by the goal line, especially at these prices. That becomes something. Lone Wolf says, what a way to show love to your team. Is, what I said? My team sucks. I'm stunned they won that game last week. Giants are bad. They have an okay defense. They have a lousy offense. They have no good receivers outside of their tight end. Their best player is going to be on the shelf for a couple of weeks. I do not like Daniel Jones at all. Yep. That's if that's the wrong way to show love to my team, I don't know. I'll root for them. I'm going to be hoping they win. Don't get me wrong. I hope that Daniel Jones is I hope that I'm wrong. I hope he's a great quarterback. I hope he learns how to throw the ball really well. He can run, sort of. So McCaffrey's the clear-cut option, right? I mean, that's we're not really breaking any ground there. He's hyper expensive. It's just a matter of whether or not you can afford him in whatever build you get. He does have a limiting impact downstream with what else can go into that lineup, obviously. So you're making some sacrifices, but there's a lot of cheap options when it comes to some of these receivers. So it's pretty easy to get McCaffrey in with some guys who are probably going to be putting hands on the ball at least a little bit or have targets at least. Starting with the Giants side with all the mediocrity, outside of Darren Waller, who is a terrific tight end, Waller's seeing 7 targets a game, 56 yards, 4.5 catches a game. He's out there 90% of the snaps last week, 72% the week before. They do have Daniel Bellinger, who saw 41% of the snaps last week, 52% on average. So he's out there about half the time. He's a capable enough kid. Hasn't been picking up targets. Wait a minute. Why would that not be... How does he have a 1 yard average depth of target without a target? Something screwy there. Something screwy in my dashboard here. Regardless, what I was going to say is, yeah, hit a target in week 1. He's caught his lone target of the season. Let's put it that way. Last year, 35 targets, 30 catches, 268 yards, got in the end zone twice. But in a situation for Showdown for single game, I do like going to these secondary tight ends and a guy who's going to be on the field a decent amount with Daniel Jones under pressure. Dump it out, red zone target or two, happens to catch the ball over the middle and make a play. Those are the kind of guys that can make a difference. He's 800 on the DK slate. You're not putting him in the captain spot, even for a cheap price. But at 800 as a flex play, as a possible, not probable, but possible, as a dart to stick into a lineup to be a differentiator for you, I do think Bellinger's appropriately priced and has, touchdown dependent upside. But there is a little bit of upside there for the tight end that's going to be out there half the time when everybody else is going to be focused on Darren Waller. Not to say that Darren Waller's not the much, much better option. He's just the guy that everybody's going to have. He's going to be a part of so many giant stacks. So many lineups that have Daniel Jones are going to have Darren Waller as the very next click. I think by going to any of the wideouts, you're probably differentiating from at least a decent chunk of Daniel Jones lineups. And then certainly by going to the lower end wideouts to the Daniel Bellingers, you get pretty far afield, which you need to do in these showdown slates to avoid those massive 500-way ties. When it comes to the receiving core, it's ugly. Isaiah Hodgins, 4 targets a game, catching 2.5 of them, 32 yards. He's gotten in the end zone once. He's seen their red zone targets. So I really shouldn't have done this with, now I don't know which ones are per game. Hang on. This is just total red zone targets. So that was per game. All right. So Waller's gotten 2. Hodgins has gotten 2. And then who's that? Paris Campbell's gotten 3 looks in the red zone. Paris Campbell's got a really short ADOT though. Where's his ADOT? 4.1 yard ADOT for Paris Campbell. 15.6% target share, getting 5 looks a game. Catching 2.5 of them, so he's catching about half his passes. Most of these guys catching about half their passes. Not ideal. Jalen Hyatt was out there for 21% of the snaps last week, 28% on average. Really, it's these guys. It's Hodgins, Slayton, and Paris Campbell seeing most of the opportunities, seeing most of the targets, but they like Hyatt. They think that he can play. He made the one big play last week. Just limited opportunities. You've also got Wan'Dale Robinson expected to play tonight, so he'll be coming back in. 2nd round pick last year. 200, 300, obviously a piece of value on the DK slate. No idea how many snaps he's going to be out there for. No idea how many times they're going to look his direction. But assuming he takes the field, he's got value at these prices. 6,000, same story, cheaper than all the other wideouts on the Giants side of the equation. Assuming that they put him out there, you have to expect that he's relatively healthy. It's just a big pool of mediocrity here. But they do have draft capital in the kid. You got to expect they'll bring him along a little bit slowly. But given the nature of where they took him in the draft, he was a decent performer at the beginning of last season. Before he hurt his knee. He had targeted 31 times. 9.9 yards per reception in 6 games. Only got in the end zone once. But again, you're dealing with a limited overall passing attack. There's talent here for cheap, if nothing else. Can't necessarily say that about a lot of these other Giants receivers. 17.2% target share for Darius Slayton. He also leads the way in snaps. 82% of the snaps last week. 75% of the snaps on average. A 15.2 yard ADOT. Been targeted more than 20 yards half a time per game, so once overall. 29 yard long on the season. They're going up against just a tough defense overall. San Francisco is going to give up yardage in the passing attack if Jones can get the ball out accurately, but they don't give up a ton through the air in terms of touchdowns. They're going to get a ton of pressure. This Giants passing attack is just going to be ugly this week. And there's no Saquon to even misdirect. There's no Saquon to gain a little bit of concern from the Niners defense. Take a little bit of the pressure off the passing game. They're just going to be focused on defending these receivers. So, I don't know. It's not pretty. They're all in play. You've got to go to a spread of all of them if you're building on 150 lineups. If I had to pick a favorite outside of Darren Waller, obviously, if we're talking about just the wideouts, man, I would have to probably say Slayton, just on the idea of a couple deep targets, on the idea of the guy who's been out there the most. Jalen Hyatt's nothing more than a dart throw that they will definitely target once or twice, and he's got a 30-yard ADOT, by the way. So they're obviously throwing the ball downfield to Jalen Hyatt, but only seeing 20-some-odd% of the snaps with a competitive wide receiver coming back. What's the opportunity going to look like? So that's a guy to mix in as a needs to score that touchdown, make that big play, could differentiate some things, but he's no secret. People are going to be using him in that respect. Sterling Shepard's only been out there 15% of the snaps, or 15% last week, 17% the week before, 3.1% of the targets, so basically a target a week, 7.5-yard ADOT, just an afterthought in the passing attack at this point. 1,000, 1,500 in the captain. Obviously, you're only using him in flex if you do throw that dart. 6,500 on FanDuel. If anybody loses like all of his opportunities with Wan'Dale coming back, it's probably Sterling Shepard. There's too many mouths to feed here in terms of the wideouts. So you can't go to too many of them in the same lineup. I think it probably caps your upside. But I do think you want to mix and match your way through some of these Giants wide receivers as you roster your Daniel Jones combinations. You don't want it to be exclusively Darren Waller. Melissa, safe to assume CMC is a lock for cash games? Yeah, I would have to think so. I can't imagine playing a cash lineup and not using Christian McCaffrey here, right? Whether that's in a multiplier spot or not is maybe a different question. I could see maybe using somebody else in the multiplier. Probably not. You probably just want to match what the public's going to be doing. Take your best shot. Take your highest projected guy. Your most likely guy, the best running back in the league. I think you'd probably just for cash just plug him into that multiplier spot. But definitely a lock in lineups, yeah. Yep, news. The Dan Le Batard Show gives their top same game parlay picks on DraftKings Sportsbook. DraftBook Sports Kings. Good alternative websites to register. Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, both going to see a little bit of an uptick with no Brandon Ayuk out there. Give them a little bit of a nudge in the projections. Both already were projected fairly well. Going up against this okay Giants defense. Giants D giving up 4.9 yards per, 6.6 yards per pass attempt, which is obviously not nearly as good as the 4.9 that the Niners have been limiting opponents to. Niners 4.1 yards per rush attempt. Giants giving up 4.6. Giants had the 27th projected ranked defensive DVOA. So obviously there's opportunity here. But I think their secondary is maybe okay. Deebo, Kittle, two tremendous talents. Deebo obviously makes tons of things happen when you get the ball in his hands. He's seen a 30% target share, 8 targets a game, 59 yards a game, giving you 10.7 yards per catch on an 8-yard ADOT. Not bad at all. 5 yards after the catch. Obviously can extend this with a couple big plays and has that big play ability. George Kittle seeing a 17.3% target share. Obviously, he's out there all the time. 96% of the snaps last week, 82% of the snaps the week before. 5 targets a game, hauling in 3 of them. Neither one's gotten in the end zone yet, but they will. Those touchdowns are coming for sure. And like I said, the Giants have always had problems with the tight end. George Kittle being one of the better tight ends in all of football the last few years. Definitely think there's tremendous opportunity for him. And I tell you what, 6,600. That's a pretty good price. You telling me that George Kittle's only worth 200 more on DK than Isaiah Hodgins on the other side? Come on. More talent on the Niners side, more mouths to feed. Fewer mouths to feed in terms of the extreme talents, but more extreme talents. So, Debo's got to get his, McCaff's got to get his. Kittle's probably the third man in the pecking order there, where Hodgins is getting most of the red zone targets in their offense and has been the primary receiver for their QB. Or actually, Slayton's getting more targets overall. But that price doesn't really make sense. I like that. I think it's a very strong value on George Kittle over there. 9,900 in the captain spot. Not bad at all. Could be your winning captain pretty easily at that price. Doesn't have nearly the downstream impact that like a Waller even for 11-1 or a Debo for 13-2. And then certainly none of the other stars. He's easily the best player at the best price, George Kittle. Anything to focus on here? Target in the red zone for each of Kittle and Debo already this year. Giants, like I said, giving up 6.6 yards through the air, 185 yards per game, but only 0.25 touchdowns a game through the air. 8.5 yard defensive ADOT. You can pass on the Giants D. They've just been limiting it a little bit. Juwan Jennings will pick up a little bit of value. He's seen 47% of the snaps last week, 39% the week before. 2 targets a game, 7.7% of the volume, but presumably will step into that next role and see an uptick in both snaps and targets. I think the same is probably true of Ronnie Bell, who was out there for 47% of the snaps last week, 47% on average. Has not seen a target yet. But for 300, for 200, presumably he's going to be the next man up and just kind of climb the depth chart there. I had him teed up over here. Thought I was going to be able to do a quick transition there because I had him teed up before. And now I don't. I already forgot his name. Ronnie Bell. Ronnie Bell. Michigan. Led Michigan in receptions, yards, and targets as a sophomore. Thank you, Fantasy Pros, for that note. Again, just me not knowing college football. That was with Nico Collins and Donovan Peoples-Jones on his team, too. How about that? Yeah, just presumably a kid that is going to step up, have a couple of opportunities, if nothing else. And those are the values that we need. Couple of looks. Little bit of opportunity. Catch the ball in the right spot on the field, make a play, get in the end zone for very, very cheap. Just trying to bounce around for any kind of notes, see if anybody's got a big lean on where these extra looks are going. Anybody got a take on a different direction in the San Francisco passing game? Could be Travis. What's going on, buddy? What's happening, Terry? I've been watching the last few shows at work without jumping in chat, but I'm always supporting and dropping in a like. I appreciate that, dude. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe. Talking our way through this football slate. So, yeah, I think, for 200, 300, 5,000 on the FanDuel slate, a guy who's been out there for snaps at the very least, probably going to see a little bit of an uptick in opportunity here. 7th round pick, not a ton of draft capital. But he's been out there. And you're taking a key piece of their receiving game out of the equation. Obviously, the Niners could get by with just these 3 guys and McCaffrey and not really have to worry about, these guys might be out there and just not targeted, which has been the role that Ronnie Bell's played already. But just given the absence of Ayuk, you got to expect at least a couple looks in this direction. Ray McLeod, a little bit less so. 7% of the snaps last week, 6% the week of on average. Hasn't seen a target yet. Don't really think we're seeing anything there. See if anybody's going bananas about Ray. Came back from a broken wrist in the preseason. Seemed like he did that pretty quickly. I would consider Ray McLeod a lower end option than Ronnie Bell, just on spec, on the idea that he's seen way fewer snaps so far. The second tight ends, Charlie Warner, not gotten a look yet. Seen 16% of the snaps last week, 24% on average. Not really a prime option. What's Dwelly? Is Dwelly playing? Yeah, Dwelly, obviously hasn't seen any looks. That's right here. But he was active. So, just not getting on the field. Don't think he's worth an option here. Projected under a fantasy point, I would imagine. Yeah, just at 1.1 on the DK board, under a fantasy point. These are the guys I'm probably going to take out right here. On the Giants side, I don't know that I take out any of these guys at the low end. Because Shepard might be the guy, even though he's projected at 2 and change, just given the unclear situation with Wandale coming back. But I think Eric Gray's going to touch the ball a couple times. I think Bellinger might have an opportunity to touch the ball a couple times. These are the oddball plays I leave in. I think the lower end of San Francisco I will probably take out. I'll leave Usek. Ronnie Bell obviously should see an actual opportunity, and it projects like it. But then you can see the kick up. Juwan Jennings would have been down here if we had Ayuk in. Ayuk would have been above where Juwan Jennings is projected. Most of those points went to these two. But Jennings gains a little ground. Ronnie Bell gains a little ground. You guys know how this works. I don't need to explain this stuff to you. Anybody we didn't talk about? Anybody I skipped over? Anybody that I didn't have on the board that you guys wanted to talk about? Any lineup combination, construction type questions, anything like that? As we've talked a bunch of times, I tend to prefer skill players in my captain spot when on DK just because of that multiplier. But that said, like I talked about at the top of the show, McCaffrey's the most expensive player on this entire slate, quarterbacks included. So you kind of have to discount that theory a little bit. Given that you do want to have some McCaffrey captain, but maybe you undercut the field, try and take a little bit of a cost advantage against the field. He's going to be in everybody's lineups in one role or the other. So you can take a little bit of a position on it and be following some logic. Get one of the QBs or a George Kittle in your captain spot, a Debo in your captain spot with McCaffrey, with their quarterback, with the opposing quarterback. We're getting a little expensive now. But there are ways to string that together, especially with those, cheapo options, the $200 guys on the DK board. Wandale's a big question mark in my mind. 200, 300, I just don't know how much I would go to him on that DK slate, given the total question about what his volume is going to look like. Unless they just rule him out, which would be handy. Or they came out and said, we're going to throw to him 5 times. Any updates since the show started? Doesn't look like. Not seeing anything on Twitter. None of these guys are in here. Yeah, so that one concerns me a little bit, especially just with all the pressure that Danny Jones is going to be under. He's going to be running for his life back there. He's not good at throwing the ball to his receivers anyway. Wandale just coming back from injury. All these mouths to feed in this passing game. That's a limited passing game. It gets dicey. But the price is certainly right. 200, 300, 6,000 on the DK slate. Pretty cheap. Second round pick, 43rd overall. 5'8", 185 pounds. Not a big guy. It's a burner though. What was his 40 time? 4.44 40 time in the 2022 combine. Not the fastest we've ever seen, but okay. Yeah, kid they believe in, kid they certainly want out there, want throwing the ball to him. I could see him going out there and getting like 2 targets and playing half the snaps or not even half the snaps, 25% of the snaps, and just, hey, kid, good effort, glad you're healthy, ran some good routes out there. Or I could see him leading the team in targets and routes run. It is that variable in my mind. I lean toward the former. I lean toward a more limited role just as they ease him back in, but I don't know that for sure. Slayton leading at 75% of the snaps on average, so it's not like they've got a lock-in number one receiver that like he'd be really competing with. All these guys are just kind of middling talents. Mama says, go Blueies. Nice, Terry. Who's nice? Larry's kind of hedging Eli Mitchell. Think they might cut CMC snaps a bit. Yeah, I think that is viable, Larry. Especially in a situation where you're talking about one of these teams favored by 10.5 points. If they get out by a couple of scores in a season where they've already fed him the ball a little bit, I think more than they intended to, or at least maybe that was just deceptive coach speak coming into the season, and the plan all along was, hey, we're going to give McCaffrey a massive amount of volume here. But they were saying coming into the season, like, we want to ease him, take it easy on him, have him for the full season. He's had injury concerns, obviously, in the past in his career. I believe he played the full season last year, if I'm not mistaken. But, tremendous player that they want to keep healthy. So in a game where they're probably going to be lighting it up, blowing out these Giants, second half touches for Eli Mitchell, cutting down the volume for CMC, absolutely. I can definitely see that being a thing. And that makes sense. It makes sense to, maybe look at him as a play. He's not been out there. In week one, carried the ball 5 times for 10 yards, a 4-yard long, targeted once, didn't catch it. And then week 2 didn't get on the field. If it's just a Christian staying out there all game again, and you're not going to see the ball, then it becomes problematic. Looking at his career, 2 years ago, 207 carries for 963 yards with a 4.7 yard per attempt. Got in the end zone 5 times on the ground. Caught 19 of 20 passes for 1 touchdown, 137 yards. I imagine that's a pretty short A-dot, but doesn't really matter. He caught them all. It was a pretty short A-dot. It was a negative 0.6 yard A-dot. Negative 1.8 yard A-dot the year after. But, obviously we're talking about a back just catching the ball out of the backfield on little screens. Only 45 carries in 2022, 279 yards, 2 touchdowns, a 6.2 yard per rush attempt. After contact, 2.5 yards per rush attempt after contact in the full season in 2021. An okay runner. Certainly somebody that they know that they can put the ball in his hands securely, if nothing else. So I don't think they're going to shy away from the idea of giving him looks if they've got a big lead. I don't think they shy away from the idea of, hey, McCaffrey's gassed. He just ran the ball 6 times on this drive and made a huge play. Got to get him off the field for a play. Let's give Eli the ball near the goal line. I could see him scoring a touchdown. He's very, very cheap. So, yeah, he's on that board of capable mixers for sure, even without volume last week. Power says the Giants are on a 12-game winning streak on Thursday Night Football. Is that right? That Pitt stat came through on Monday Night Football. That one's going to break today. Giants are not winning this game. Do not put your money on the Giants. I wish I could manage to not put DFS shares on the Giants, let alone money on the Giants winning this game. Imagine you can get a pretty nice price on the money line. But, this is going to be a bad one. 6:49, we've been talking about this one for 49 minutes. We're kind of through it. There's obviously different things we could talk about price-wise. Maybe I'll build in a lineup building component on this show. That was always fun when we did that with the lineup builder on the old shows with Emac and Nick. Maybe I'll start doing that. Because there is, with these one-game slates, there's only 10, 15 relevant guys in the entire game. We kind of fly through it fairly quickly. And then I'm kind of limited in what I can talk about without, I'm just kind of imagining how these lineups click together in my head as I talk about it. But it would be nice to actually sit there and look at some of these combinations. So maybe for Monday Night Football this coming week, I'll do something as far as get a little lineup build together. That's something I can build in Excel. Easy enough. What do we not talk about, guys? Talk about the fact that I don't know how to spell Yushek. That's for sure. Wait, he's 32 already. Yushek carried the ball 7 times last year, got in the end zone once. Carried the ball 8 times the year before, got in the end zone once. Carried the ball 17 times in 2020, got in the end zone twice. This could be the day. If he gets in the end zone, you're going to want to have him. I don't know that he's going to touch the ball. I don't know if he's... I assume he's active. But I don't know if he's going to touch the ball. I do think he's one of those mixers, though. What is this? Is this from this year? September 19th, 2023. I'm trying to scan this article that just popped up. Why is this? Is he just not coming up in stats for some reason, or is this... Oh, this is referring to last year. That's why. I know this is exciting here, watching me read something on the internet that you guys can't see. This is some Niners Nation talking about it. Juicex volume. What did he see snaps wise though? This isn't incorrect, is it? It's not in there. Well, that's weird. Trying to figure this out. Why the hell wouldn't he be out there? Not that we need to waste our time on looking up Kyle Juszczyk's snap percentage, but I don't know why it wouldn't come up. You know, well, whatever. I don't know why that's not coming up. Either way, we know that Kyle Juszczyk does have the opportunity to put the ball in the end zone if they happen to give it to him. Power says Debo has a 41% target rate without Ayuk for 25 catches and 428 yards. That's pretty solid. 8Game asks if you're making a group to include the Giants defense, like if the Giants are captain or flex play this. I'm not sure what you mean. Oh, who would you pair with the Giants D? Like, who do I want along with the Giants D from the Giants? You mean as like skill players? I would take anybody. I mean, it's not really a question of that. What's the kid's name? Was I think Gray was getting looks as a punt returner, wasn't he? At one point. I don't know if that's still valid. Like if you're talking about who could get that defensive score. Yeah, Gray's returned 2 punts, a 14-yard long. So, maybe a little bit more reason to throw that Eric Gray value dart if you want to tie him to that Giants defense in terms of breaks one for a punt return for a score. But yeah, outside of that kind of the thing that you're trying to put together, I would take any of the Giants players, like whoever you can afford, just in combination in the group. I would just let it fly. If you had something more specific, like explain to me, bet the Giants outright, I'm lighting money on fire. I have the running backs or Jones in a group required to play one. Yeah, I think the running backs always make sense. If you're looking for the Giants D makes a couple plays, they keep the score in check, it's a grindy kind of a game, then I typically would go in the direction of running backs. That's more full slate action for me, where Showdown, I just think you take so much of just anything, right? There's going to be a score here. You're not necessarily playing the correlation game as much. But yeah, that would be a good thought as for the running backs, just purely for a defensively oriented, grindy kind of a game. And then, yeah, maybe the punt return. Arcathelza says, I don't know why no one is on the over 31.5 receiving yards for Hodgins. Because he sucks. Because Wandale's coming back. No, I think that's certainly reasonable. Where's his... Scrolled over. I was like, where the hell did all the tabs go? He's putting up what's his yards per game? 32 per game so far over 2 games. Right on the line. But 12.5% of the targets. Not a ton of opportunity. 4 targets a game so far, with the idea that Wandale is coming back. Not the craziest idea. Arcathelza says, I think Hodgins is at worst wide receiver 2. Yeah, I mean, odds are it's probably just these two guys as 1 and 2 again. But you do have the threat of him coming in, and you got to get some looks down the field for Jalen. So I think, you limit some opportunity there. He's got a 7.5 yard ADOT, so they don't make him, the major downfield target. He's getting more looks in the red zone than anything else. I don't think it's a bad bet. Don't get me wrong. But it is right on the line with what he's done so far. Out there for only 67% of the snaps, 75% last week. And again, with Wandale coming back, that does throw a wrench into it. But yeah, it's the right line. Let's put it that way. I don't think it's the worst bet in the world. You also do have the idea that the Giants will be throwing the ball probably a little bit more today. That was on those opportunities came on 32.5 pass attempts per game. So if you figure he goes over 40 today, we're going to have more looks to spread around. So that obviously gives everybody a little bit of a boost. If you want to play the Giants D, the Niners D, obviously they're okay. The Niners D is the more expensive option, but obviously the team in the much better spot. Danny Dimes, for whatever his talent is definitely turnover prone, both putting the ball on the ground and through the air. Giants overall fairly turnover prone. The kickers, both definitely in play. As I said at the top of the show, Graham Gano, one of your highest projected Giants on the board here, higher projected than any of the receivers. So I definitely think you can lean into some kicking on the Giants side of things. They're probably going to just be getting their scoring done through kicking the ball today, whatever scoring they might manage. On the other side, I do expect the Niners to put the ball in the end zone a little bit more, probably limits the overall ceiling for Jake Moody, but certainly could have a couple field goals, couple extra points top of a day. Between the non-player option, or I don't know how to put that. Between the kickers and the defenses, I think the Niners D number 1, Graham Gano number 2, Jake Moody probably number 3, Giants D probably number 4 out of that 4 unit group. QBs, I'll give Danny Dimes the nod over Purdy just by a little bit, given the idea that he might run the ball in, that he projects out slightly better. Basically everything else, man for man, falls onto the Niners side. Better running back for sure. Tight end is debatable. That's the one spot where the Giants will give them a little bit of money in this, run for their money in the skill players, but they run away with running. Oh, that was clunky. They're clearly the better team when it comes to the running back position. Even without Brandon Ayuk out there, they're clearly the better team when it comes to the wide receiver position. So, obviously, everything leans toward the Niners. Arkathels, I haven't really looked at props. It's not something it's something that I like playing, but I never remember to actually check it or bet it. Ayuk officially inactive. If you got any in mind, I'm happy to think about him, kick him around like we just did with that other one. But yeah, nothing really burning a hole in my pocket, needing to bet on it props wise. I'm just opening up FanDuel on my phone here, see if I can look at a couple real quick. Can I look at these without logging in? I think I can. McCaffrey 50 plus rushing yards and Debo 50 plus receiving yards. Plus 200 bet on FanDuel. Looks like a promo bet. I feel like that's pretty likely. What's Debo done in a per game sense? 59 yards per game, and the Giants have been giving up passing yards. McCaffrey's easily going to rush for 50. That one's not crazy. Promo bet, it's probably a total sucker bet, but it feels pretty likely to happen. Where the hell are these actual props? Anytime touchdown. McCaffrey minus 210. Kittle plus 190 for an anytime touchdown isn't awful. Darren Waller plus 280. Danny Dimes rushing 37.5 attempts. He'll be running for his life. He'll definitely be running for his life. The question is he going to be able to gain the corner against a pretty effective rush? This is the dashboard. Let me pull up my see if I can pull that up real quick. I've got him projected under by about 10 yards. I believe that the actual total is probably closer to that line. I might need to look at that rushing projection for how it's impacting his rushing. Look at the rushing back end projection rather for the total that I've got him at to see how it's impacting his per game rush. That feels a little bit low where I've got him, but I do have him going under. Could be Travis. You got people doing a 5K against the Niners with Daniel Jones. Who's doing that? Don't do that. Who's 8 games doing that? 8 game. My gosh, man. I hope that's not all in one chunk. And I certainly hope it's not on the money line. The points, maybe. Maybe. I really hope that's not in one bet on the money line. What else we got? I have McCaff going easily over 50 rushing yards. What's his actual prop? I know that was a promo that I read before. Rushing yards. There we go. 79.5. Ooh, I got him under that. Danny Jones I got under. Breda I'm sure I've got under. Eli Mitchell's prop line is interesting in that it's somewhat indicative of Vegas expects him to get a little volume today. He's got a 30.5 yard over under. So it feels like Vegas expects him to touch the ball a few times today, which is interesting just given what we were talking about earlier with him. Receiving. How about McCaffrey over 30.5 receiving yards? I got him clearing that by 7.5 yards. Debo. Too close. Xavier Mallara chimes in. Niners 38, Giants 14. You think the Giants are going to score 14 points tonight? Sounds a little high. I don't know. I like the front side of that. Niners 38. That sounds about right. Yeah, I think the Giants are getting lit. They might score 14, 17, 20, something like that, but they're losing this game by double digits. Oh, what is no prop for Wandale, doesn't look like. They've got Vegas has Slayton as the highest prop on the Giants receivers, 37.5. Hodgins 30.5. Waller 47.5. So out of the wideouts, I mean. I got Slayton at under. Hodgins. Ooh, I got Hodgins like right on the line. I think out of all the ones I've looked at over this last couple of clunky minutes, Arcathels, I think that's that Christian McCaffrey receiving yards. I've got him clearing the 30.5 by a pretty decent margin. So there's a little prop betting talk for us, gang. First time we've done that. We can also make that a part of the show if you guys want. Probably not for the main slate shows that are already way too long, but for when we're talking about one game, two games, we can talk props a little bit more. Happy to do that. And just give me another thing to do to make sure that these individual stat lines are dialed in now. That'll be fun. With that in mind, we're coming up on an hour to the slate, so I think I'm going to punch out, get some lineups built. Any questions, drop them into the Discord. If you haven't been here before, hit the subscribe button so you know when we go live. Hit the like button if you like the show. If you don't, I won't pressure you. I don't know why you'd be hanging out if you didn't like the show, but if you liked it, give me a little thumbs up there. With that, good luck out there, gang. Somebody out there go win something. Let's all go tie. It's like 5 of us. Let's go tie. We'll chop $200,000. What do you say? Somebody go win something tonight. I'll see you guys tomorrow.